Meg is in the house, queen of second opinions. That's what I am. Crown is optional. My mic is on. But thank you for caring, Carl, my partner in crime. Couldn't do this by myself. Need a team, need a village. I call it my tribe. Let me tell you something. Experience is my superpower. I got 45 years in as a clinical therapist. Not dead yet. And not retiring. I got too much juice in this lime, fire in this belly. Plus, I'm in the third act of life, which is over 60. If you need to know the age, you get to go to the website, secondopinionated.com, and learn as much as you want to learn about me. That's fine. I teach that which I live. And I love that about me. Got this great combination, therapist, human being. My style is self-disclosure, and that is not how I was trained, but I know now that is the most effective way to relate to the people that come to see me. And by that notion, here is the best creation that I have made thanks to the help of my team, Carrie and Carl and Justin. Come get your megabytes. Go to the website. Put me on your team. You can text me, call me. We can set up something for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Why? Because I want to be your human chat GPT. You don't need an hour with me. You just need a few minutes. That's how laser focused I am. But in the meantime, Carl.
Hey, hey, hey.
Here's where we're going tonight. This show is titled, Whose Life Is It Anyway? Yep. Because I tell you what, in the 45 years of me being a therapist, I'm sorry I didn't count the number of people who were living a life that wasn't theirs. They were living life through somebody else's goals, somebody else's dreams, somebody else's vision, and it wasn't theirs. Lived life heavy on obligation, heavy on pleasing. But I understand that as a therapist. Do you know, Carl, that we as human beings have two basic needs when we're coming out of our mother's womb as we travel through childhood? You know what those needs are?
No, what are they?
Need to be loved and the need for approval. And what I've seen is so many children get right through into adolescence, then hit the big adulthood, and they are locked in pleasing somebody else. I just had a client the other day who is a film producer, only to tell me that his parents did everything they could to have his psyche burned into becoming a lawyer. Now, you could not pick two more opposite professions or callings, because the film producer is creative and the legal is just so bound, obviously, with rules, regulations, protocol, appearance, status, you name it. I love the fact that this man found his way to honor his truth, his calling. But as he made it clear, Meg, it was not easy. He paid a big price with his parents. They didn't really rally around him till much later in life. But that's a beautiful example. And here's a quote. I love this. Live your own life and fail versus living someone else's life and succeeding. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about claim your life. And then people go, well, Meg, how do you do that? Well, I'm going to impart with you what has worked for me. And I like to live by example, and I like to give people concrete examples. Now, I don't think it's at all an accident that my favorite thing to do as a child, and I'm talking grade school, was get those dot-to-dot books. You know, you open them up, and every page there's a splatter of dots, and you take your pencil or your marker, whatever, and you start connecting the dots. And what happens? as you connect those dots, a vision starts to appear. An image on the paper could be a horse, it could be a unicorn. It doesn't matter what it is. But that was the delight of taking that pencil, that marker, and starting someplace and then going to the next dot and to the next dot.
You know what, Meg? You start, and as you're going, eventually you see the vision.
Right. It reveals itself to you.
Ooh.
And that's what people don't understand, is we've been trained in this culture to be so performance-driven, to achieve, accomplish, become, again, somebody else's idea of success rather than listening to what's going on inside of us and what I call kind of leaking outside of us. So here's my point. I'm talking to the first actors tonight. And let me refresh you. First act is birth to 30. Second act is 30 to 60. Third and final act, just like in the theater, just like in the play, is the finale. And I'm in the third act, although I do stand-up comedy on the side. Some of you know that. I just did a show last week, which just put me on another natural high. I actually referred to the third act as living life on the checkout lane. You know, at the grocery store, there's the conveyor belt. Well, I tell people, I'm on it. I just don't know what day, what hour, what minute I'm going to meet the cashier. And she or he is going to check me out of this life. But see, I believe in multiple lives, so I've got a couple lives left. And I'm not going to tell you what those visions are. But I already have a sense of what is next for me, which is really cool. But back to the first act. What I'm trying to impart to you is start noticing things that are painful or pleasurable. Now, as a kid, you're not necessarily likely to track this. But when you get over 21, between 21 and 30, and that's exactly what I started to do. I started to wake up and look back and notice some things and made them literally like a dot that I would connect over time. So here, let me give you some examples of some of the dots that showed up in my first active life. Number 1, number 3 of 10 children. Birth order matters. Birth order coupled with gender really matters. I had an older brother and an older sister. So really, my parents, Carl, could have stopped there and been complete. And one of them was what we call the family hero, did all the right things, very, very, well, status didn't fit as a kid, but just very aware of the surroundings and looking good and not messing up. The other one saw, well, that's already covered, so I need to start screwing up. So this is important. Where I look at my family, I'm like, okay, I got someone who's doing all the right things, someone who's doing all the wrong things. What's left for me? Nothing. And that is important. I spent my grade school years, my childhood years, flying under the radar. I didn't want to do anything good or bad. I just got out of the way. And there I was, sauntering through grade school, being about as invisible as one could be. That's one huge dot. Next dot you want to look back on for me was raised devout Catholic. I mean, we prayed, we got on our knees, we did the rosary, what was her name? Our Lady of Perpetual Help. My parents had a picture of that saint or whatever she was. You'd have to look it up. I don't remember anymore. But we'd go in our parents' bedroom and pray to this image because my mom and dad were cut from that cloth.
What was the name?
Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Ooh.
Are you going to look it up for me?
Oh, you know I am.
Of course, that's great because you're going to revive some old memories. That's another huge dot. What I mean by these things influenced and or shaped me, but I didn't know it because when we're going through our childhood, we are not our brain doesn't even start to really form until we get into high school. But these things get burned in our psyche. And I decided later to become very, very conscious of things, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Then the other dot that showed up was my mother, hope you're resting in peace, did not take to me. Very cold, very distant, and as I put together later, very threatened by me. Now, it didn't help that I was named after her and my father's mother. That didn't help. And thank God, I've said this before, and I'm going to say this until I exit. Thank God I was named Margaret when I was what? I think I was around 4 or 5 years old, getting ready to go to kindergarten, so it would be a little later. And my dad, to his credit, said, oh, we can't let her go to school with Margaret. That's too many syllables. Children will struggle with that. So he cut it to Meg. Well, that's another dot. Having that name be such a factor. Again, in my family at that time. I'm the third Margaret. I didn't want to be the third Margaret. I wanted just to be me. And to my dad's credit, he came up with Meg. Not that that's terribly unique, because Margaret has a lot of derivatives. Midge, Madge, Peggy, Megan. But Dad, thank you, cut it down to Meg. And let me just fast forward. Loved the name, loved a nickname, loved one syllable. And there I was in high school, going to my locker, and my neighbor to the left tapped on my shoulder and said, Sheila, Meg, do you know why I like your name? I said, no, but you're going to tell me. Because it spells gem backwards. And I went, okay, another dot associated with the nickname Meg, Gem. And I have had a lot of fun with that. But let me go back to the dots again. I'm talking about dots. Pay attention either along the way or after 21 to 30. Look back and see what's being revealed to you, because there's messages in those dots. So I'm already not connected to my mom. And there's stories later that I can back that up that I found out later. She was threatened by me because I pursued a very full life. And she was a mother of 10 children. And what's very clear to most of us, she felt trapped. She felt trapped. That's on her. But I was so not connected in this family, and that's a combination of many factors, that at age 8, Carl, and I don't even know if any of my siblings know this, but I caught my mother in the kitchen by herself doing dishes. And I tugged on her and I said, Mom, am I adopted? Oh my God. If looks could kill, I would have died right there in that moment. She didn't even answer. But folks, I remember that memory. That's another dot. And when you start making note of the dots, and if you choose to live a self-examined life, which is what I did when I hit my mid to late 20s, these things all started to make sense. I felt, again, lost and invisible already by age 8. So notice how much I then traveled through many of the other years in grade school, just quiet. Again, not here to disturb or upset anybody or anything. But let me tell you something. What I now understand is I truly am a free spirit. And free spirit people are people who do not live much of a life of conformity, which is really what I was doing in those grade school years. I decided to be quiet because I couldn't find a place, which was fine. But all of that free spirit energy was building up, and it exploded in my puberty years, 12, 13. How so? Here comes the next set of dots. I decide I don't like being this invisible, quiet person, so I'm going to be the first daughter to, I'm saying it this way, not that I thought it back then, raise some hell, Carl. Yep, sure did. So what did I do? First daughter to smoke. What's next? First daughter to bleach her hair. What's next? First daughter to stay out all night. Ooh, baby, that didn't go over well. Then, first daughter to break a law. I shoplifted. And rather than doing anything in a penalty kind of way, they just called my parents. But do you see what's happening? Quiet, 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 then explode. I became what I call the actor outer because I was tired of being invisible. But what was really underneath that was Meg. Part of who Meg really is free, unbridled. So here's the better side. I kind of cleaned up my act a little bit. Then I decided to become a cheerleader. Well, go after. And I competed and I got on the team. Another big dot. So now I'm starting to go, okay, I don't think I want to live a life of trouble. That didn't pan out too well. But what I did was I took that pinned up energy and discovered there were other more appropriate ways to channel it. And cheerleading was part of it. But here was the real, this is by far one of my top 3 dots that showed up. My junior year in high school. I didn't like school at all. I was not engaged in learning. I did the bare minimum. So I was your typical C minus D. I had a few F's along the way. But it didn't matter because I had no interest. No interest until I did. And that junior year in high school, the class was called Social Problems, which is just code for psychology. It was the study of human behavior and all the things that influence and shape a human being and how people could end up in the underprivileged, poverty-stricken area of life and how some others can flourish. Won't go into the details. But what happened was I got hooked. I'm like, people, human being. Why? Because by then I had a lot of things about me that I didn't understand and that I was conflicted with myself. So it isn't no accident that I was drawn to that. But the real hook was I got my first A. Never had an A before, was into the C's and D's and F's. And I'm very clear when I say this. That was the equivalent for me, and I'm direct, of having an orgasm. It was explosive. Got the A, loved the feeling, and I had to go to college. My father required all 10 children were going to college, whether they wanted to or not, whether they liked it or not, because that he valued higher education. So I was in a pickle. I didn't want to go, and he would just say, Meg, get over it. You're going. Figure it out. So there I was in junior year getting that first A, got it hooked, marched directly into my guidance counselor's office and said, I have to go to college. I love what I just learned. I love the feeling of A. Never had one before. What would you recommend? And she said, you got a choice of either psychology or social work. I ended up becoming a social worker as the credential because social workers, especially back in this day, were all in the trenches with people. They were just direct service, whereas psychologists would do research, a lot of testing, would write books, journals, periodicals. They do some counseling, but they did a lot of other what I call head stuff, which didn't appeal to me. Yeah. So let me stop here and take a breath because I want to make sure I'm talking especially to my first actors tonight, birth to 30. And even for some of you that are in the second act, 30 to 60, because a lot of times that's really when the consciousness oftentimes erupts. Like people now have got some years under their belt and they're going, wait a minute. They start to question more. They know in the second act, like, okay, this is my shot between 30 and 60 to go after what I believe I'm meant to become. So it's not that you have to have your stuff together by 30. Matter of fact, that's the best part because we're living longer. Some of this is getting pushed back. And I've got several clients that are in the thick of being 40, 45, and they're now doing a complete re-examination of their life. They're looking back. They're now pulling out their dots and they're going, oh my God, oh my God. And I just had a client the other day, had a big epiphany. What she's done was stuff she can do, she's capable of. But capability and skill set does not necessarily mean that's what you were meant to do. There's usually an underbelly to everything. My story, which I feel very blessed and grateful for, is a clean, straight line for the most part. What showed up in the first act, the things that I'm talking about, another big one was going steady. To have a man want to line himself up with me because I saw myself as so not interesting in high school. I didn't really have any visibility. I didn't have any notoriety. There was nothing special, but he saw something special in me. That lit up a fire. Plus, back in that day, we talked about this in a show before about going steady and how that's done. But back in my day, it was everything. It was almost a pre-proposal proposal. But the key for me was he saw me. He liked me. He wanted to continue getting to know me. He wanted to give me time. And again, tie back to 1 of 10, time, individual time with either of my parent was not existent. There was a lot of side-by-side stuff. Come on, girls, let's go here. Come on, boys, let's go there. But the sense of being an individual, having any kind of, I call it feeling special, was really in short supply. And I'm not blaming or criticizing. But again, going back to playing the dot-to-dot game, although now the Connect the Dot books are still around, but they've actually taken that equivalent of a dot-to-dot and turned it into some video games. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Oh, well, guess what? One is called Dot-a-Pix, P-I-X. Interesting. Another one is called Nodes, N-O-D-E-S. But the point is, same concept. There are things that are put in a visual cue and several, and then they start to reveal themselves in some kind of sequence or order, and then the picture or the image comes up. And I love that concept. I really do, because there's so much pressure that has been put on people to know things at such tender ages. And again, I like the approach of, and this is what I do with my clients, backtrack and have them speak to certain particular events that either have happened to them or that they contributed in creating, and to tease out what the significance is. What's the emotional impact? Was that painful, pleasurable, or both? Really, really, really matters. And I think I do believe that's how come I was drawn to become a therapist, because I enjoyed that revelation. And then I learned how to support and assist people in discovering their own dots. It's just so interesting. And again, back to some other big significant dots that showed up in my 20s, which I'm grateful for, is to be, so now I've got my social work degree, and I'm going to work and support myself because I didn't see marriage in my future at all. And I get into my first, what I think is significant social work job. I was a therapist at a halfway house in the inner city of St. Louis. Actually, I've served at 3 of them. One is only still around. But they had funding problems, and I was the last person they had hired, and I was the first one they fired, which is not an unusual practice. So that happens to me, and I'm still a member of the YMCA downtown St. Louis playing racquetball, because that was the popular sport at that time. And it was good training for my body. And I was unemployed, collecting unemployment. Oh my God. A lot of people like to do that. I didn't like it at all. That's another interesting kind of dot. I took it because I needed the money and I was entitled to it. But it truly did feel like a handout in the sense that I'm a hustler. I like to work. I like to put skin in the game. Back to the point, I'm playing racquetball and I'm bitching on a regular basis to my racquetball partner, Joe, about being unemployed. I could not find another social work job. And to his credit, at the end of one of our games, he called me out. And he said, Meg, how bad do you want to work? And I was a little bit insulted by that. I said, I want to work bad, but I just can't find anything in my field. Meg, that's not what I'm asking. How bad do you want to work? Bad, Joe. He said, then get your ass, and this is literally what he said, and I don't filter anything. I'm going to tell it like it is kind of gal. Get your ass down to Anheuser-Busch because they're looking to hire their first woman foreman. And I, without skipping a beat, said, Joe, I don't like beer. Don't drink it. I'm a social worker, therapist. I have no business in a beer bottling plant. And here we go. He came back swinging. Meg, how bad do you want to work? And then I figured out the message. Meg, go to Anheuser-Busch, apply. You won't get hired, but you can appease Joe and get him off your back, which is exactly what I did. I went down, applied, got Joe off my back. We're back to now playing racquetball as I know it. And the phone rings, and it's Anheuser-Busch. They want me to come and interview. Well, I know how to say yes. So I went down, and I didn't do anything different other than tell my story. I'm a social worker. Of course, here's what I didn't appreciate, folks. I'll never forget the guy's first name, Jim. He leaned in. He said, wait a minute. Are you telling me you've been a counselor therapist at a halfway house in the inner city of St. Louis? Yes. And your caseload were all men? Yes, they were. Of various ages, 21 to 60? Okay. And you said they were fresh out of the penitentiary and they used to have a heroin habit? Yes, that's correct. Well, I remember that interview just shifting right there before my very eyes. But again, I had no attachment to it. 2 weeks later, Meg, you're hired. You are our first woman foreman. Thank you. And he made it very clear, Jim went right back to, he said, Meg, you're right. You've not ever had this experience. That's correct. But this is a predominantly male-dominated experience. The fact that you've already been working with a range of men, I love that, out of the penitentiary with a former, he said, Meg, I think you can supervise our beer bottlers. And how do I debate that? I couldn't. But I just knew I was a fish out of water. But see, look what's happening. One job loss, firing, vacancy, vacancy. Do something to get this guy off your back. Go down and apply. Get hired. I went from making $7,000 a year, Carl, to $45,000 a year.
Which was a lot.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It was so much money, but money didn't matter to me. That's interesting. Matter of fact, I don't say regret, but I gave a lot of it away. And in some circles, they would say, Meg, you pissed a lot of it away. But that's okay. The point is, I didn't know how to hold it. Yes. So what I love about that is now I'm their first woman foreman, and I'm miserable. Miserable. And then I find out through one of my colleagues, I don't remember the circumstance, doesn't matter, but they have an EAP, an employee assistance program, which I knew as a social worker meant free counseling. So I'm like, you know what? I don't have to pay for this. I'm going to go talk to Joanne. Where are you, Joanne Houston? Oh my God. I should look and see if she's still alive. It's possible. Told her, I said, oh my God, I'm miserable. I'm a fish out of water. I broke out in shingles on this job. And I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor said, Meg, this is an old person's disease. And I was in my late 20s, early 30s, roughly, late 20s, 29-ish, I think. And he's like, what's going on? And I said, oh my God, I'm so stressed, so stressed. And then he heard some of the other horror stories. The sexual harassment that I endured, oh my God, I'd be so wealthy if that term existed back then, because I would have filed suit. I don't tell anybody the details because I like to keep that back there. But boy, it toughened me up. Bottom line is, I find out the EAP counseling, well, Meg, you want to stay in your field? Yeah, but I need to get a master's degree because that would level me up. Meg, Anheuser-Busch will pay 75% of any degree. Another dot. I said, well, I think I understand why I'm Anheuser-Busch's first woman foreman. Put my tushy into graduate school at St. Louis University. Hi, alma mater. Got my MSW, and that launched me into the next second act, 30 to 60, where new dots sprouted. I'm going to stop there because I love the fact that I ended up solidifying my career by having that degree. Thank you, Anheuser-Busch. And started my own business as a result of being a client of therapy and having a therapist that mentored me. So I'm going to stop there. Think about looking back or starting to track now. The one other quote which I love, and it's tied to Joseph Campbell, who's a philosopher, and this is exactly what's been my experience. There will come a time when you will look back on your life and everything will make sense. And my success is tied to me learning from the failures and the mishaps in the first active life. Track, pay attention, observe. Makes all the difference in the world. All right, we're out of here.
I do my hair toss, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Hair toss, check